I'm joined this morning by the entire senior leadership team of the department. I attempted to introduce them all, so maybe you at least saw them by video. I will bring them selectively to future open access Cs. I suppose that's the plural, and you'll have a chance to interact with them directly. One of the reasons that I want to do that is that this department is about the full 460 plus people who work here and not just one person who you interact with routinely. I'm supported by an incredible staff, many of whom have joined recently, but some of whom have been here for many years. We do a number of different things in this department. Our aspiration is to do them extremely well, and this team will help us do that. So I'm going to skip reintroducing them and get into a little bit more detail around what it is we're trying to achieve. I want to begin with a couple, I guess, more philosophical points. I was given some advice when I began running for office that if I ever left a conversation and hadn't given someone the answer as to who to blame, then I'd fail as a politician. And I hate that advice. For me, it is about being accountable. It is about measuring ourselves relative to our objectives, and it's about delivering results for the people of North Carolina. And so I aspire for this department to act in this manner, and I certainly see everyone at this table and in these walls acting in that way, and I love that. Second is we have a lot on our plate as Department of State Treasurer, and we aspire to do those things that we do extremely well. We are happy to add incremental responsibilities when asked. One example of that is around Hurricane Helene lending. But we have plenty to do that needs to be done even better than it's been done historically. And so those are the two philosophical points I want to make around how this department will evolve over time. We are responsible for managing almost $250 billion across different parts of what we do in this department. We send out about 375,000 pension checks every month. We provide health benefits for about 760,000 people. And so we have a number of important responsibilities on our plate. We also manage the two biggest deficits or biggest liabilities for the state. Round numbers, about $16 billion that the pension is underfunded relative to what it needs. Round numbers, about $36 billion in the state health plan. Those are areas that we are laser focused on, and we must deliver even better results in going forward as we think about the financial picture for this state. On the state health plan, we have been out in front of what is challenging news that I think everyone at this point understands. Healthcare costs continue to rise faster than inflation, and there are a number of reasons for that we hope to solve over time, but we can only be part of those solutions. What we can manage are the challenges that are directly in front of us. We have a $507 million deficit in 2026, which will require belt tightening of all sorts, but also likely incremental contributions also from everybody. So those are the challenges that we have in front of us in the state health plan, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we aspire to make this health plan better for all the members over time as well. And we have plans to do that, but those are not plans that we can implement on a month's timeline. They're plans that we can implement on a multi-year timeline. So in the context of the short-term challenges, we don't want to lose sight of the long-term vision, and that is to provide better benefits for all the people who work so hard for our state. On the investment management side, depending on your time period, and if you look at the Boston College Center for Retirement Research, they provide this data, and so you can look this up for yourself. State of North Carolina is either 49th or 50th in investment performance over any period. That challenge manifests in the inability to provide cost of living adjustments to our retirees over time. That is something that we are actively seeking to change. North Carolina is not 49th or 50th in any major way across any other metric. And we, as managers of the state pension plan, aspire to address that. That will require some changes in asset allocation, some changes in governance, and some additions to staff, which are underway. We've recently appointed 4 people to the Investment Advisory Committee, which represents a material change in the approach that has been taken historically to managing those assets. A lot more detail there to come, or depending on your interest today. 3 other quick updates or thoughts for you. First, on Hurricane Helene. In the most recent disaster relief bill passed in December, a $100 million cash flow lending program was asked of us to administer. And so we brought on Jeff to do that. We would anticipate material progress in partnering with the counties in the coming weeks and getting those funds to the people who need them. On the state and local government side, we have done a fantastic job historically of making sure that our municipalities and our state entities have not gotten into any kind of financial trouble. We will remain ever vigilant there, but we also seek to be a bit more user-friendly. We've had a tradition around when we let people sell bonds, that we limit it to 1 per day. We will seek to change that. We've had a tradition around how long people can have debt outstanding or the amortization period. We'll seek to amend that to assure that people can finance assets relative to their useful lives rather than relative to a reasonably arbitrary number of years. So again, without sacrificing the conservative posture of that group that has served this state so well for almost 90 years, we just seek to be more user-friendly to the municipalities who go through that process. And then finally, on unclaimed property, we have done a good job of getting property back to its owners, but we seek to do even better. Hopefully we'll be able to do that this year. Sent out over $300 million last year, and Alan and his team are well underway, off to a very good start in this year, hopefully eclipsing that number. So we have a lot of things going on here at the Department of State Treasurer, and a lot of great people who are working on them. Happy to stop there and take questions from anyone. I'll do it in order of people's hands being raised, assuming that I am technically capable enough to do that from my phone. So with that, the floor is whoever wants it first. Ray? Ray, go ahead. You're muted, Ray.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Curious if you could elaborate on what you were saying about local government commission and amortization periods for various debt issues.
Sure. Historically, we've capped amortization periods at 20 years for all types of assets. Some assets have a much longer useful life than 20 years. The market has gone to matching amortization periods with useful lives of assets, and we have not followed. So we're going to study that, make sure that, in fact, the useful life of the asset that is proposed to be financed does match the longer expected asset or amortization period, so that we can allow people to finance things appropriately. So it's that. I think you'll see 30-year amortization periods for some certain fixed assets, and maybe shorter for other assets that have shorter useful lives. But it's really trying to get at economic truth relative to how people finance, rather than a one-size-fits-all 20-year approach. Is there a follow-up, Ray, on that?
Nope, that was clear.
Okay. Bradley George.
Thank you. You mentioned incremental increases in the premiums state employees pay in the health plan. What are we talking about? $15, $20 a month, more than that? How do you see that unfolding?
Sure. So we have a state health plan board meeting February 7th to begin the process to look at these things. The one item on the agenda that needs attention there is the ability for the state health plan to charge differential premiums based on income. So we will look at that. I think we had a conversation at the November board meetings around that That is an idea that I think enjoys substantial support across the entire board. But that's the first question: is can we change the premium architecture to be more related to income than a flat fee? Second, your number is not far off. What's been communicated publicly and we'll stick with for now is $20 at the bottom end of the income distribution. It will be more than that at the higher ends of the income distribution. And there's 100 assumptions behind those numbers, but we think directionally that's where we'll be.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. David Beasley.
Yes, Mr. Briner. Could you talk in general about what the investment fund is doing wrong we've had record markets. Are they too conservative? Are they in bonds when they should have been in stocks? Are they, what's going on?
Sure. So in aggregate, and this makes a number of simplifying assumptions, we're about 48% exposed to the equity markets and 52% to cash and fixed income. The average state pension plan in our country is 70% exposed to stocks and private equivalents and 30% to fixed income. So it really is a risk posture question. We have been a conservative state fiscally for many years, and that has served us very well. And so I expect us to still be at the conservative end of the spectrum of all the states. But carrying over 10% cash for long periods of time has had a material cost to the pension plans. If we had performed at the median of state pension plans for the last decade, we would have no pension deficit. We would require over $1 billion less of employer contributions into the pension plan. This is Monday morning, so that is Monday morning quarterbacking, obviously. We need to be very thoughtful, and Kevin and his team are being very thoughtful about how we change from 4852 to something different than that. The irony of all of the inflation and the challenges that's presented people is on the investment side with higher interest rates. It's easier than it has been in a long time to make 6.5% without taking much risk. We do need to take a little bit, but not a lot more. I was just speaking with a manager before we started this call who is active in the mortgage market. If we want to lend to real estate assets, you can do that at a 7.5 or 8% rate of return today. Those are the type of assets we're talking about getting into, going from cash, which earns 4, to conservative fixed income investments, which earn 7.5 or 8, is what we're talking about. We're not talking about being very aggressive in venture capital or crypto assets or other things like that, which are not really appropriate for the level of risk that this pension plan needs to take. So it is a bit of a nuanced message. It is, a half step or a rung up the risk ladder, but it's not a bunch of steps up.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Michelle Crouch.
Hi, yes. So I've heard from a number of state health plan members who are concerned that their providers are no longer CPPs. And as a result, they're facing higher copays, and just wanted to see what your plan is when it comes to the CPP program. Are you going to reopen the enrollment period for those providers?
Sure. So a couple different things around CPP. CPP was an effort to both steer our members towards higher quality providers, but also to provide a transparency of pricing. We have not been successful in providing transparency of pricing. CPP was an opt-in program, which didn't compel people to be part of it. And so we have not achieved the main goal, which is price transparency. So that's, I guess, the first piece on CPP. The second piece is we began a process in May last year of getting people to sign back up for CPP as part of the transition to Aetna. That was the original deadline. A subsequent deadline passed in October, and then a third deadline passed in December. There are some providers who ignored all of those deadlines and who are asking now to rejoin CPP. CPP has the effect of us paying those providers more and our members paying less for them. As it relates to the large deficit the state health plan encounters, it is going to be very hard for us to spend more money with providers who ignored a series of deadlines. That said, there was a transition to Aetna here. And there are some providers who have made good faith efforts to meet those deadlines. And so we're working through ensuring that we know who those are and working with them to get them back on CPP. So there's a process there to make sure that we are respecting our partners who have tried to make this transition, but at the same time, making sure that we don't exacerbate the large deficit the state health plan faces already. Happy to follow up on that if that wasn't clear.
Is there a list of providers somewhere that you're working with that members can access? And I just also want to confirm, so you are intending to continue the CPP program?
No, everything is on the table for 2026, including CPP. This will be part of the board discussions over the coming months as to what we do there. As far as a list of providers, that is evolving each day. And so we are hearing from those providers who are just figuring out now that they are not part of CPP for whatever reason, either because they thought they did it and there's been a good faith effort made and it didn't complete, and we'll work with those, or they just ignored us for almost a year. And so we're going to work through each and every one of those individually, but we've not published a full list of those yet.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
AP
Dillon.
Good morning, sir. Thanks for taking my call. Quick question. It's sort of related to the CPP. Your predecessor had been a big proponent of that and had been trying to get more transparency and help bring down prices in that area. We're looking at a price increase in premiums right now. Will you be working with large providers to try to bring down some of the costs, which would then translate back to lower premiums, number one? And number two, with the pension, are you concerned about underfunding of the pension as people are starting to actually take their pensions?
Sure. So maybe on the pension side first, the legislature has met its actuarially required pension contribution, I think, every year but one for the last 70 years. And we would expect that to continue. That has been a fiscal priority for the state. And so I'm not worried about that. We do have more members, more dollars going out than coming in every year. That is a known aspect of the pension plans and has been for some time. So I'm not overly worried about that. Those are circumstances that have not really changed that much. On your state health plan question related to CPP, and happy to follow up on this as you see fit. The CPP was well intended, and we need to get to a better set of transparent prices in the healthcare system, and it intended to do that. But its enforcement mechanism left it with the predictable result, and that is that those who got paid more to be members of the CPP joined, and those who did not because they were not forced to. So CPP in aggregate has cost the state health plan money. Again, the intention is a good one to try to make sure that we can work with providers in a transparent way to get our members better health care for a lower price. One of the great things about the healthcare business, which is ironic given all the other businesses out there that don't work this way, is that price and quality tend to be inversely related in healthcare. So knowing the data, that allows us to send our members to better providers of healthcare. And the attendant benefit for the state health plan is that it ends up being cheaper in the long run. So we've got to get to price transparency, working with providers to do so. But how we do that, there are a number of permutations to which are going to take this time to work through.
Quick follow-up?
Sure.
You're talking about enforcement mechanisms, and yeah, there wasn't anything really in there with teeth that could bite. So in terms of that, would you be looking to legislators to try to help enforce some of this or try to get some transparency out of the providers that are here in North Carolina as healthcare here is, the costs are higher than a lot of places, especially in the Southeast.
Right. We have to work with all the stakeholders, all the payers, to try to do that. The state health plan is a big payer, but we're far from a majority of the payers in the state. And so we do have an ability to help shape that conversation, but we need other people to join us in that conversation. And so that's what we'll be looking to do, is to use our scale as a state health plan in conjunction with other payers and the providers to get to a better solution in the long run. If you fast forward 20 years, there's really only two choices to how we'll operate under healthcare: either a fixed price regime, which will be a multiple of Medicare, and that is something that I do not hope happens because I think there's all sorts of problems with that, or a market-based mechanism, which allows us, with transparent pricing, to have people choose where they're going to get their health care, knowing what the quality of that is. Those are the only two paths in the long run. Between here and there, we'd like to use our skills and our scale as the state health plan to affect a better outcome for everyone. But we're going to need everyone to play ball to do that, including most likely the legislature. David Beasley.
Yes, could you talk about the weight loss drugs?
Sure.
Is that an affordable option or not? Your predecessor seemed to think they were outrageously priced.
And they are. So I think a number of different pieces on the weight loss drugs. First, they work. And there are side effects and there's not perfect adherence and all of those things. But generally speaking, these drugs have amazing impacts on a number of people's lives. And so that's the most important piece of the whole conversation is, can we get our members to a better health outcome? And the financial aspects of that are also important. We found ourselves as a state health plan limited in what we could do with the GLP-1s, where we had to cover people who wanted to lose 5 pounds and people who wanted to lose 150 pounds, just the same. We've got to be able to have a more nuanced approach to who benefits from these drugs, or at least us paying for those drugs. 2, capitalism works. People understand that these drugs work. And many other pharmaceutical companies, particularly the large ones, have been trying to make an oral version of this, or at least their own version of this, for a number of years. And so if you look at the forward pipeline, 2026, 2027, there will be an enormous number of competitors to Novo and Eli Lilly. And Novo and Eli Lilly know that. So there's a dynamic where these things will get much cheaper over time because, again, capitalism works, and that will benefit our members. We would like to reinstate coverage to GLP-1s. I'm hopeful that we can do that in 2026 because it is a good long-term investment in certain of our members' health. But we've got to be able to differentiate between those who want them for small weight issues and those who want them for much larger weight issues. We're working to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Kenneth Lee.
Hey, good morning. Your colleague said you're rating the use of DEI in those programs in your department. What does that actually mean, and what are the practical effects, and are there any personnel job positions affected by that?
So we have not had DEI as a policy in this department, and we will continue along the same way. As a reminder, the EEOC was put in place in the 1960s, which ensures equal opportunity to everyone based on any a characteristic you can think of. And we believe in that. We believe in giving people the opportunity to succeed. That's fundamental to the American dream. And so what we're saying around the DEI issues is that those have become weaponized for a different agenda. And I reject that different agenda. What we are interested in is making sure that we have enabled people to succeed based on merit.
Thank you.
Sure. Dave Mildenberg.
Hey, thank you for having this time. I was wondering, how have you encouraged people to be members to be part of the CPP for those of us who aren't members of the state health plan?
Sure. So CPP really focused in two areas with higher reimbursement rates, and those were primary care and mental health. And so the reimbursement rates were just substantially higher for those two particular areas. And so what you saw is a number of mental health providers and primary care providers opted into the program. Other areas, more surgical, were offered a much lower reimbursement than what they had historically, and they opted not to join. So that's the difference between who opted into CPP and who opted not to participate. Is there a follow-up to that, Dave?
No, that's really helpful, and thank you. I did not understand that. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Michelle still has her hand up, but I just don't know if she got to upraise it.
Michelle, did you have another question?
Yeah.
Or
I'm
okay.
good, thank you.
All right.
That's everyone.
Last call. Anyone else? Happy to take anything. Well, seeing no one, we will look forward to doing these on a routine basis. It probably will be a little earlier than the month, than the last week. Going forward, we'll figure out that calendar and of course get back to you. I'll look forward to introducing you to all of the team members here. There are a lot of great folks who I'd hoped to introduce you to, and the technology got in the way of that, but no worries. We appreciate all the attention on what we're doing. It is important for our state. We have a lot of work to do, but I'm capably surrounded by a number of people who will help us do that. And we're looking forward to reporting back to you guys on our successes and taking your questions, both in these forums, but also individually. We want to be an open book. We want to tell you how we're doing, the good and the bad, and we'd encourage you to reach out whenever you like. Thank you, everybody.